When I heard that the developers of Road 96 were going to be taking us back to the fascistic country of Petria for a prequel called Mile Zero, I got excited. I loved the first game and went into this new installment expecting more tense discussions, more hot-button issues, more conspiracy theories, and maybe even more hitchhiking with strangers. What I certainly didn't expect was for this politically charged prequel to become a skateboarding game with a fair amount of rhythm mechanics tossed in. Trust me, this is just the first of many baffling decisions made by DigitArt Entertainment. This is my review of Road 96 Mile Zero. The first thing you need to know about Mile Zero is that this is a standalone prequel to Road 96. The second thing you need to know is that you'll definitely want to play this adventure after completing the original story, as this adds a lot of context and information to what happens in that first game. Believe it or not, the third thing that you need to know is that this prequel trades hitchhiking for skateboarding, a polarizing decision that we're going to talk about a little bit more in a few minutes. But first, what I want to do is introduce you to Zoe, who was one of the standout characters from the first game. I described her in my original review as a bit of a kleptomaniac with a strong independent side, and this prequel does a good job of fleshing her out as a real character. We discover that she's a bit of a musician, loves to roller skate, is a pretty good artist, and hangs out with her friend Kaito in an abandoned construction site on the edge of town. Also, did I mention that she comes from a well-off family that is led by her father, the actual Minister of Oil? I only bring this up because Kaito has a very different upbringing. He comes from an immigrant family who are barely making ends meet, even with their slummy basement apartment. He's feeling the effects of Petria's authoritarian government firsthand, something that threatens to pop Zoe's safe and comfortable bubble. Now, despite the political differences, the two friends bond over movies, music, skating, and rebelling, even if the two of them plan on sticking it to the man in completely different ways. There's a playfulness early on where it's just about a couple of teenagers having fun and narrowly escaping trouble. But as we explore the city and interact more with the people, it's clear that everybody's treating Madame Zoe differently than her best friend, something that ends up manifesting in a lot of big ways before the story is over. Now, what you'll quickly realize is that this game is split up into three distinct parts. There are lengthy conversations, there are mini-game activities, and then there are musical skateboarding sections. So, for example, after chatting with Kaito's parents, you'll take over his job delivering newspapers in what can best be described as an on-rail shoot-'em-up. After all that is done, Zoe and Kaito will skate through a fantastical stage that helps to fill in the rest of the story. Although they start out simple, a lot of these skateboarding sections play out almost like music videos. These are big, elaborate set pieces that aren't afraid to go over the top, even if that means skating up the side of a skyscraper with a King Kong-sized security guard chasing you. And that's just one of the cool designs. The game does a good job of visually representing how each person feels and the emotions that they're working on. The way the skateboarding bits are handled towards the end of the game are truly impressive. There's more conveyed through a simple obstacle course than you get from a 10-minute conversation. This is really the whole reason to play Mile Zero. Unfortunately, everything outside of the skateboarding bits left me extremely frustrated. A lot of the problems I have with the storytelling come down to the fact that this is a prequel. The game would like you to believe that Zoe and Kaito are divided by politics, but they really aren't. At best, Kaito is firm in his convictions, and Zoe is, well, she's on the fence, just waiting to be swayed one way or the other. She's not necessarily for the authoritarian government, but as the daughter of the Minister of Oil, she's not exactly seeking out reasons to be against it either. I got the impression that she just really hasn't thought about it all that much, while it's literally the only thing on Kaito's mind for obvious reasons. The game would like you to believe that we have some control over the two friends' political leanings, but we really don't. Mostly because there really aren't two sides being presented here. There's no realistic way to turn Kaito into a flag-waving patriot of this fascist government, especially given what's happening with his family. I mean, you can, in theory, push him in that direction, but those decisions never make all that much sense to his character. This problem is only compounded with Zoe, since we already know what happened to her in Road 96. You can try to push her away from Kaito's way of thinking all you want, but it never really feels like you have all that much control over her direction. I mean, her fate is sealed. Perhaps that's why she's given such a weak political point to begin with. It's impossible to see what's happening with Kaito and then actively choose to have Zoe stay home and eat ice cream with her creepy security guard. The game really wants to use the political debate as a plot point, but it isn't very interested in actually having that debate. I would also make the argument that the game has a natural ending point and then decides to just keep going for another hour. You see, there comes a point where the game just runs out of musical skateboarding sections and basically turns into the original Road 96. I understand that this is designed to seamlessly connect the two games, but it feels completely different from everything that we played up to that point. It also leaves you with a lot of conflicted feelings about who to root for, with one of the options potentially being reprehensible. Instead of getting me excited to jump back into Road 96, the ending made the series feel dirty and unnecessarily mean-spirited. The other big problem I ran into with Mile Zero is that it just chugged along on my system, no matter what options I chose. After talking to other players, I realized that the game has a real optimization problem. The good news is that it doesn't affect the more action-packed skating sections. So a short freeze or drop in frame rate here and there ended up not being that big of a deal. Still, this is one of those issues that will need to be addressed. While I'm frustrated by the shallow political debate, I do feel like Mile Zero is worth playing. I really enjoyed hanging out with Zoe and Kaito, and you can tell that a lot of attention has been put into making this world come to life. I also really loved the skating sections, especially the more over-the-top ones towards the end. I have every intention to go back and master each and every one of these stages. They're that good. Too bad the rest of the game isn't quite up to that standard. Road 96 is back with a prequel adventure featuring one of the best characters from the original game. This is a politically charged story about two unlikely friends who live two very different lives. While the setup is cool, and I have no problem believing the friendship, the political discussion is shallow, and the player never feels like they have that much control over the fate of Kaito or Zoe. Couple that with a few lame minigames and a bunch of technical issues, and you have a game that really shouldn't work. Thankfully, a bunch of amazing skateboarding levels and a soundtrack full of catchy tunes, including the Offspring, will keep you coming back long after the political discussions have died down. Road 96 Mile Zero is a prime example of why making a prequel is really tough. Hey, thanks for watching our review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What unrelated franchise needs an extreme sports makeover? We've already had Solid Snake riding a skateboard, so, anything's possible. I don't know, maybe unpredictable, but I'd love to see a Ghosts and Goblins skateboarding game. Grinding just isn't hard enough. I want to be gobbled up by a man-eating plant while I ride. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back later this week looking at the next Nintendo 64 game being added to the Nintendo Switch Online service. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.